Welcome everyone, thank you for joining in. We had a fantastic webinar. The title was How to Secure Growth by Digitalizing Non-Aviation Revenues. We broke a couple of records. We were short of 500 attendees, so that's fantastic. And we broke the record for the most asked questions. So we thought it would be a good idea to basically record all the questions and answers that were given that we couldn't respond to during the webinar. Of course, you can still watch the webinar on the airport international website, and also on our website we have the recording as well, so please feel free to see it if you haven't seen it yet, and we will start getting some of these questions answered. Airport apps have generally all around the world usually quite poor download rates, which is why what I also mentioned in the webinar, it's really crucial for an airport to focus on becoming an omni-channel player and not focusing too much on that one channel, whether that's the website or the app. The main problem that we see with airport apps is that only frequent passengers really download the app of their home airport. No casual or one-time traveler typically downloads the app of an airport unless they're forced to do it for some reason to get access to the Wi-Fi or something like that. So in our opinion, airport apps are somewhat becoming obsolete. You can now do most of the functionality that these airports have in responsive web apps or progressive web apps to take it to the next level. And so it's no longer necessary to build these very costly native apps on all channels unless you're really using geo-positioning, indoor navigation with augmented reality and some more of these power features. For 80% of the airports app out there, it would be perfectly fine now to use a progressive web app. So currently the FRA Marketplace is linked from the in-flight entertainment system of Lufthansa in a trial that they're currently doing together. It is also accessible from lounges at Frankfurt Airport, Lufthansa operated lounges, which is basically a white label version of the store branded as a Lufthansa Marketplace. The Lufthansa app currently is outside of it, which to be honest is a shame, but the Lufthansa app is also not directly integrated with the webshop. It simply links to it. So Lufthansa has not built native shopping functionalities into their app. Many of you might know that it's quite complex to build an entire shopping experience natively, and so airlines in the past have shied away from doing that and typically linked to a website instead. While Lufthansa hasn't integrated it directly into the app yet, the platform has been built in a way that is encouraged and very easy to do. We can take any kind of order directly via the Commerce API from any third-party app. So any app can sell on behalf of the marketplace, so that passengers don't even need to come to the actual airport marketplace. And in addition, we also provide native components of OM3 that can be embedded into existing native apps of airports and airlines to create a more sophisticated shopping experience as well. In general, airport and airline don't necessarily need to compete with each other because we believe that there's much more potential if they collaborate. Of course, the layout and the setup at airports differs quite substantially between, for example, US airports, European or Asian airports, etc. Whereas in the US, primarily airlines run the terminals individually in many regards. In most other countries around the world, airports are run by one airport authority, and sometimes the airlines have a stake or have some management oversight over the management of the terminal, but are not directly in charge of managing it. So that differs quite substantially. However, we see that there's a lot of potential for collaboration between the airport and the airline when it comes to selling services and products to the passengers if they don't directly compete with each other but rather augment each other. For example, many airlines are exiting in-flight duty-free business and are therefore now able to support airports on their sales of duty-free and tax-free products. On the other hand, the range that airlines have in flight is also much more limited than what an airport can provide. So especially in the luxury segments, it might be more interesting for airlines to collaborate with powerful airports and hub airports that are their main hubs in order to get more SKUs, more product stock available to their passengers, because they have the direct access to that passenger. So we believe that the best world is really where both of them collaborate, do a joint venture or some kind of revenue share agreement. In today's e-commerce world, most sales happen through some kind of affiliate marketing, retargeting, or online marketing, and someone always earns a commission on that. So this is something that airports and airlines are not quite used to, but this is how the e-commerce world works. And so we believe that similar processes will also be established between airports and airlines. We are in fact currently working on building an NDC connector. NDC in the end is just a way to push data between systems, and all of our e-commerce systems are fully API based. So NDC is a protocol that we will support in the future. So far, NDC has been very much focused on the non-retail side of distribution, and hopefully with our support of the standard, we will be able to extend that much more into retail as well. So of course, building a marketplace means that you have access to collecting all kinds of data on your passengers. In order to use that data for the more operational parts of the airport, of course, only makes sense once you can really generate a critical mass, which is not that easy to do, because of course you have a lot of one-time flyers still that are not such regular flyers. So until you have, let's say, more than 50% of your passengers annually in a digital database, would require quite some time. But of course, we can use this data in a more generalistic way to optimize processes and see how people plan their shopping and things like that. So for that, it's definitely usable. Tracking passenger flow is not something that is part of an e-commerce marketplace. There are several providers that are offering this already. One of the most used one is called Xovis, and they run passenger tracking and analytics and the software behind it at more than 50 airports around the world already. And that data can be accessed and it can also be used to track pass-through traffic in retail sections, pass-by traffic, dwell time in retail sections, and all of that. So these solutions already exist, and we can integrate with them if an airport uses that data. However, our platform is a one-to-one focused platform. So we focus on creating an experience for every single passenger individual to their interests and their needs, which is basically counterintuitive to a generalistic tracking solution that basically tracks groups of people. So it's not exactly the same use case. This is absolutely crucial. The data is 100% owned by our customer, which is the airport or the airline, depending on who builds the marketplace. It does not get shared between different airports. We don't operate as a Google and as a data kraken who collects all of the data and uses it. We are a European company. We have to abide by the very strict GDPR guidelines for data protection, and no data passes hands outside of the legal channels, obviously. The time limit between purchasing downtown, having it delivered to the airport, and then flying out is something that is simply determined by the airport's decision and business rules. Of course, if you let passengers purchase months in advance already downtown and then pick it up when they fly out, the airport is responsible for storing that product for a substantial period of time, which is both costly at an airport and might run into capacity constraints. So we wouldn't recommend allowing that. We would limit it to a week. Of course, there are ways to circumvent it. We have the ability to use secondary warehouses, so we can store stock until the day of departure and then only fulfill it to the collection point at the airport on the day of departure. But of course that adds some complexity to the logistics and the necessity for storage space for the airport. And if you think about how most people do their shopping just before leaving or during a week of holiday, it does not target a substantially large user group to allow them to shop a month before flying. Typically, this is a service provided by the airport. The way that we kind of presented to the boards of airports is that what we're building is essentially a digital terminal. The airport builds and pays for a digital terminal that doesn't enable people to fly, but that does enable people to spend, purchase, buy services, and so on. And so because of the airport providing that entire solution, it is paid for by the airport, and the airport benefits through the regular concession fees it receives from the concessionaires. So the business case is quite straightforward, not unlike an expansion of a physical terminal where you put new retail concessions and so on. There have been some airports where the airport didn't have the capacity or for a different reason didn't want to staff the collection points. In those cases, either an outsourced services companies does it, or another option is that if the duty-free main concessionaire already operates collection points at the airport, it could be also an option for them to provide the collection points for all of the retailers at the airport for a fee or as a service to all of the passengers. Because of course that drives penetration to the stores, so it's a win-win for them as well. Absolutely, we're already rolling that out at one of our airports, which will be announced very soon. It's definitely a business case to position lockers at, for example, the luggage collection to make it more easy to collect regular purchases and purchases where you don't need to see the product in the store, for example, beforehand. And especially airports that have a very high throughput of shopping, for example, liquor. This is a very interesting use case. There are already airports that are doing that at massive scale, for example, in Tel Aviv, where they're doing hundreds of millions in revenue through locker-based pickups. It tends to be a natural kind of path to try to find the path of least resistance and just partner with someone who can already offer everything and make it really easy, and basically the airport has no work with it anymore. However, of course, partnering with someone like Amazon and not running the marketplace yourself means that you become completely at the mercy of Amazon's commission agreements, Amazon's supply agreements, Amazon's company and brands. Which means that for you as an airport, you are no longer talking about high double-digit concession fees. You are now talking about low to single-digit concession fees. You are also no longer controlling which brands are being sold or offered at your airport. You also cannot get access to certain product ranges and products that Amazon cannot get access to because certain brands don't want to work with Amazon. So while it sounds like a tempting shortcut to work with a big marketplace provider like Amazon, we believe that it would completely destroy the current non-aviation revenue setup that airports have and the dependency they have on them because of the significant reduction of concession fees for the airports. While technologically we can already enable that, if two of our airports, for example, decided to partner, Frankfurt or Heathrow or any of the other ones, this is definitely feasible. However, of course, there needs to be a business case for both of them that makes sense. And an airport, of course, has an interest to sell products to a passenger at full concession rate, rather than just a referral to another airport where they can just get a commission then. However, we believe in the long run, passengers will decide themselves where they want to buy, and especially price-focused passengers are already now looking for the airports that have certain products and certain ranges in the most cost-efficient price points. So we believe that down the line it might become unavoidable for airports to participate, and for more of an aggregated shopping experience that makes it possible to buy from any airport that you're passing through on a given journey. But business process-wise, between the airports, no one has started that yet. Technologically, it's not a problem at all. It depends a lot on the airport and the layout between domestic, international, tourism, and so on. In a typical hub where you have a very healthy load of international passengers, also high value shoppers from Asia, for example, and you also have a very large footprint of domestic passengers. Let's take Heathrow as an example. It is actually quite evenly distributed, but not necessarily on the same category. So, for example, electronics are coming from frequent flyers because they fly regularly and they see the airport as a cost-efficient way to buy their electronics. Whereas the luxury products, for example, and the very high basket values are typically driven by tourists that are flying to the country for a holiday and that want to buy want to do their luxury shopping at Heathrow. So it's not necessarily a polarized kind of shopping, but it depends a lot on which target groups and what demographics you have at your specific airport. The major cost of rolling out an OM3 or any sort of omni-channel marketplace solution is in integrating into the existing ecosystem at the airport. So integrating with the retailers, getting the product data, standardizing the product data, getting the front end, the customer experience, the user experience right, integrating with airport systems like CRM or flight information system and so on. So these things cost pretty much the same no matter how small or big the airport is. There are certainly ways to do more entry-level implementations without all of the sophisticated delivery logic, without potentially some of the more complicated functionalities that are more costly to implement and roll out. But there is still a minimum investment needed even for small airports, which is currently starting in the 2 to 3 million euro range, as we stand at the moment with OM3. If you want to talk to us about OM3, about rollouts, about integration, etc., you can contact anyone from our sales team, including myself as well. The easiest way is to just write to sales@aoe.com or to contact us through our website, but feel free to also contact us via LinkedIn, me, Adil, Steven. We are all available on LinkedIn and happy to answer your questions and get in touch. Thanks a lot for staying tuned in. I hope you enjoyed all of the answers. Please feel free to contact us if you have any more, and we would be happy to welcome you at one of the next ACI conferences, airport conferences, PTE, or anywhere else. We're usually at all of these shows, so please just come by and say hello, and looking forward to speak to you in person. Thanks a lot. And by the way, we have written a very thorough white paper that you can download for free on our website that covers a lot of the topics that I've covered in the webinar and in these questions, and even more about what the business case is, what players are involved, what kind of technology solutions are needed and are integrated with each other. So please go to our website aoe.com and you will find the white paper straight there, and have a good read.